Trigger warning, in this video I'm going to be talking about suicide a lot. As someone who has struggled with suicidal thoughts, I understand that it can be hard to hear someone talk about it, even in a lighthearted manner, as I'm hoping to do. Hello, welcome. If you're here, if you're watching this, that either means that you're a fan of the Twilight series, or you hate the Twilight series and you're about to comment really rude things on this video, which is fine. However, I just want to say, if you don't like the series personally, that is totally okay. Watch something else. Maybe you don't like it and you're trying to give it a chance. That is also totally cool. However, if you're gonna watch this, you hate the series, and you think it's okay to call out people who do like the series and call them stupid or fangirls or whatever, don't, please. And if you do, let's talk, because I feel like there might be some sort of underlying issue. I just wanted to get that out there. Another disclaimer, I'm getting over a cold, so if I sound really congested or if my throat starts to sound dry and raspy, it's because of that. I have water here. I'm gonna do my best. Anyway, this is basically an essay that I wrote for fun. I graduated college 4 years ago, and I wrote an essay for fun about Twilight. Cool, awesome. So if I'm looking over here, I'm reading off of my computer because I have basically an entire essay here that I'm using as my script, and I did not have time to memorize it. I'm very sorry. So the Twilight series as a whole is very dramatic and emotional and heart-wrenching. Everything about it is very life and death, no pun intended. Twilight, the first one in the series, book or movie, is, in my opinion, the most balanced of all of them in terms of balancing out teen angst and drama and love and passion with comedy. Read the books, people. If you think that the series is just super emotional and dramatic, read the books. Edward is hilarious and charming. Bella is hilarious and charming and also fairly bisexual. Twilight, very balanced. New Moon, not at all. It is so emotional. It's just kind of a train wreck hitting you in the face. It's just a lot of barely masked suicidal tendencies. Eclipse and Breaking Dawn, from what I remember, get a bit more balanced again, so I'm really going to be focusing on New Moon right now. Also, a disclaimer again. Even though I just said, and I will be saying in this video, suicidal, it is a very serious issue, and I feel like the term gets thrown around a lot, which ends up taking some of the meaning away from the word, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to add to that. If you're watching this and you throw around the term suicidal a lot, you know, I know it's very millennial/Gen X to have a minor inconvenience happen and say, oh my god, I'm suicidal, I'm gonna kill myself. I just want everyone to keep in mind that there's a spectrum in what it means to experience suicidal feelings. The range of suicidal ideation varies from fleeting thoughts to extensive thoughts to detailed planning. That's a quote from Wikipedia, which I know it's Wikipedia, but this isn't for a class, so don't judge me for using good old Wiki for a definition. There are times where I feel like a more appropriate term to describe Bella would be apathetic to death. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't fall on the spectrum of suicidal. I just want to be clear that I don't believe Bella is in a constant state of wanting to die. More so, it's that she doesn't care if she dies or not. Despite that disclaimer, I'm gonna use the term suicidal a lot. I just want people to know it's not me casually throwing the term around. It's me being lazy and not wanting to say apathetic to death every time. So, just so you know. So, there's a conversation Bella has with her dad in chapter 4 of New Moon. He's talking about how he's concerned about her, which, fair. This is just after the infamous September, October, November, December pages being months showing time is passing. Genius, Stephenie. Oh my god, it's so good in the movies too. I don't have to tell you guys know. Anyway, Charlie says, I think we both know it's not getting better. I'm fine. He ignored me. Maybe if you talk to someone about it, a professional. You want me to see a shrink? My voice was a shade sharper as I realized what he was getting at. Maybe it would help. And maybe it wouldn't help one little bit. First of all, Charlie's clearly very concerned about her. He's her dad. He loves her so much, and she has been a zombie for the past few months. And he says, maybe talk to someone. And she freaks out. Personally, I have been there. Yes, I'm sure other people have as well. But it's so alarming to see someone be like, oh my God, I've been miserable, but you want me to talk to someone about it? No. And I will say, she goes on to talk about how, you know, therapy, counseling only works if the subject is honest about what's going on, and she can't be because of these supernatural elements to her story. She can't tell her therapist that she was dating a vampire because she would end up in some facility, which maybe would be good for her, but probably not. And so I do get it. I do get why she feels like she can't talk to anyone, but she very easily could go to therapy and take away the supernatural elements and just tell her the watered down version. Just say, my boyfriend left me. I was in the hospital earlier, last year, whenever it was. I was in the hospital and he really helped me, and his sister really helped me, and I grew really close to them, and they left. I haven't been able to get in contact with any of them. I'm really upset. What do I do? And guess what? The therapist would probably be able to help. Just an idea. So early on, there's an evening where Bella goes to the movies with Jessica in Port Angeles. She sees a group of men standing outside a bar, and she starts to approach them instinctively because they remind her of the frat guys who tried to attack her in Twilight when Edward saved her. So Jessica asks Bella if she's suicidal. She kind of throws the term suicidal out. She says, oh my God, what are you, suicidal? And Bella responds, no, I'm not. My voice sounded defensive, but it was true. I wasn't suicidal. Even in the beginning, when death unquestionably would have been a relief, I didn't consider it. I owed too much to Charlie. I felt too responsible for Renee. I had to think of them. And I'd made a promise not to do anything stupid or reckless. For all those reasons, I was still breathing. Remembering that promise, I felt a twinge of guilt. But what I was doing right now didn't really count. It wasn't like I was taking a blade to my wrists. New Moon, Chapter 4. That's a lot, sorry. First of all, I just want to mention that if someone out there is struggling with suicidal thoughts, there's nothing wrong with using other people as an excuse to stay alive. I've heard some people say, no, you shouldn't rely on other people because what if they leave you or what if they disappoint you? You should be doing it for yourself. But that's just not an option for some people. So use whatever you can to make it through the day, a week, a month, and maybe someday you will want to stay alive for you. That's great, cool. Secondly, there are infinite ways to self-harm. So saying it wasn't like I was taking a blade to my wrists, using one specific way of self-harm and saying, oh, I'm not doing that, is a classic way to devalue your own behaviors. Thirdly, as stated before, there is a spectrum. There is a wide variety in what it means to be suicidal. Bella may not be actively planning to kill herself. However, let's be honest, she's definitely thought about dying and potentially even killing herself. We all do. I mean, maybe not everyone. That's probably unhealthy. I should probably go to therapy. But come on, let's be honest. Probably the majority of people have at least thought about, what if I killed myself? That doesn't mean you're actively planning to do it. And you know what? Maybe you think it and then you go, oh, that was dark. Let's move on. But there you go. So it's at this point in New Moon that everyone should be thinking, oh man, I really hope Bella goes to therapy. Spoiler alert, she doesn't. So jumping ahead to the cliff diving fiasco, we are treated to such gems as It was not hard to convince myself that I didn't have time to search for another way. I wanted to jump from the top. This was the image that had lingered in my head. I wanted the long fall that would feel like flying. New Moon, chapter 15. Even the conversation she has with her hallucination of Edward right before she jumps, she tells him, "You wanted me to be human. Well, watch me." New Moon, chapter 15. It's her subtle way of telling him humans die, so I'm going to die. Which, again, implies a certain amount of wishing for death. It could be said that she meant it as long as I stay human, I will die eventually, sort of thing, which is almost more of a threat to Edward to turn her into a vampire. But either way, I feel like it definitely falls on the spectrum. After Bella jumps off the cliff, when she's stuck in the water, her Edward hallucination is telling her to keep swimming, to keep fighting. She says, "I didn't want to fight anymore, and it wasn't the lightheadedness, or the cold, or the failure of my arms as the muscles gave out in exhaustion that made me content to stay where I was. I was almost happy that it was over. This was an easier death than others I'd faced. Oddly peaceful." New Moon, chapter 15. Hello, this is Suicidal Thoughts 101. How may I help you? I understand that at this point she thinks it's too late and she has resigned herself to death. But the fact that she's comparing it to all of her other near-death experiences makes me think that she thinks about those experiences a lot. Not in an idolizing type of way. She may not be sitting there going, "Oh man, you remember when I almost died that time? That was great." But clearly they've crossed her mind. I hope they crossed her mind, because if you have a near-death experience and you never think about it again, which I will say, reading the books, sometimes it feels like that's what Bella does. Something bad happens to her and just out of sight, out of mind, she's fine. So I hope she's thinking about it. But, thinking about death a lot is slightly worrying. So after Bella has been pulled from the water by Jacob, she's safely back at home to find Alice Cullen sitting there. They have the following conversation, and it's a long one, sorry. Starting with Bella saying, "You saw me fall." "No," she disagreed, her eyes narrowing. "I saw you jump." I pursed my lips as I tried to think of an explanation that wouldn't sound nuts. Explanation? As in a lie? As in she has something to hide? Alice shook her head. "I told him this would happen, but he didn't believe me." Bella promised. Her voice imitated his so perfectly that I froze in shock while the pain ripped through my torso. "Don't be looking for her future either," she continued to quote him. "We've done enough damage." So let me get this straight. Alice, and presumably other members of the Cullens, told Edward that Bella would probably try to kill herself, and Edward was able to convince himself that she'd be fine because she promised him not to do anything reckless? What a moron! "But just because I'm not looking doesn't mean I don't see," she went on. "I wasn't keeping tabs on you, I swear, Bella. It's just that I'm already attuned to you. When I saw you jumping, I didn't think. I just got on a plane. I knew it would be too late, but I couldn't do nothing. And then I got here, thinking maybe I could help Charlie somehow, and you drive up." She shook her head, this time in confusion. Her voice was strained. "I saw you go into the water, and I waited and waited for you to come up, but you didn't. What happened? And how could you do that to Charlie? Did you have any idea what Edward—" I cut her off then, as soon as she said his name. I'd let her go on, even after I realized the misunderstanding she was under, just to hear the perfect bell tone of her voice. But it was time to interrupt. "Alice, I wasn't committing suicide." She eyed me dubiously. "Are you saying you didn't jump off a cliff?" "No, but," I grimaced, "it was for recreational purposes only." That grimace implies to me that she is not telling the whole truth. Her expression hardened. "I'd seen some of Jacob's friends cliff diving," I insisted. "It looked like fun, and I was bored." Ellipses are never a good sign, by the way. She waited. I didn't think about how the storm would affect the currents. Actually, I didn't think about the water much at all. Alice didn't buy it. I could see that she still thought I had been trying to kill myself. Because you were. I decided to redirect. Because you can't come up with more lies? New Moon, chapter 17. Okay. Again, I'm sorry, I know that was a lot. But come on. In what world is Bella not actually trying to die here? Is this an attempt to convince Alice of the fact that she didn't want to kill herself? Or is she trying to convince herself of that? Even a little bit later on, when she and Alice are still talking, she tells Alice, well, I'm not dead, at least. And I survived, I pointed out. New Moon, chapter 17. It reminds me of the line in the first Twilight movie when Bella's in the hospital after Edward stops the van from crushing her. And Charlie asks, you could have been killed, you understand that? To which Bella responds with, yes, but I wasn't. So even though that line isn't in the book, it's only in the movie, I think it fits with Bella's personality in the book. And I think it really shows how apathetic Bella has been towards death since the beginning. But anyways, back to Alice and Bella's conversation. Bella is catching Alice up on everything she's missed, and Bella narrates, I glossed over the beginning, skipping the motorcycles and the voices, but telling her everything else right up to today's misadventure. Alice didn't like my thin explanation about boredom and the cliffs. New Moon, chapter 17. Again, Bella is using phrasing here that implies that she isn't telling the truth to Alice or to herself about her intentions. Later on in that same chapter, Alice has agreed to stay with Bella, but she says she has to leave for an hour or so to hunt and get some things together. She's worried about Bella, rightfully so. So she takes a peek into the future to make sure she'll be okay. After having her vision, she concludes with, yes, you'll be fine, for tonight anyway, she grimaced. Again, a grimace is, I think, very telling. This makes me think that if Alice didn't come back that night, after an hour like she said, Bella would finally just be completely broken and might actually kill herself. Hence, the grimace. I finished her sentence. It was amazingly easy to say his name now. I wasn't sure what the difference was. Maybe I wasn't really planning on living much longer without seeing him, or at all if we were too late. It was comforting to know that I would not have an easy out. New Moon, chapter 19. So this is when Alice and Bella are on their way to Italy to save Edward from trying to kill himself. Again, it's that whole kind of like, you weren't planning on living much longer if he didn't survive? Okay. Also, I want to mention here, I am fully aware that New Moon is based on Romeo and Juliet, and so that is why everything is so death, love, my love is gone, so I must die. My love is gone, so I must die. It's a really brief summary of Romeo and Juliet, in case any of you have to read it for class. So still on the trip from Forks to Italy, Alice and Bella are having their conversation, and Alice says, we'll do what we can, Bella. It's not over yet. Bella responds, not yet. And the Volturi will get us if we mess up. You say that like it's a good thing. Knock it off, Bella, or we're turning around in New York and going back to Forks. Bella, are you okay? Hope so. The last quote I have is, again, on the way to Italy. Bella is thinking, she says, when I end up at home alone in Forks with no one at all, maybe I didn't want to survive, no matter what happened. New Moon, chapter 19. With no one at all. So, Charlie, your dad, he's no one. And Angela, that really sweet girl who you've been friends with for the last year or so, no one. And even outside of Forks, your mom is still alive and in Jacksonville with her husband, Phil, who also likes you a lot. Cool, okay, but you've got no one, so awesome. But yeah, I mean, just the whole like, oh, if we can't save Edward, I might as well not be alive. This is why everyone said Twilight was such an emo book series. Because it is. It's so like, Edward is my one true love, and without him I have nothing. And then Edward is like, Bella, you're my one true love, and without you I have nothing. And she's like, so change me, Edward, change me into a vampire so we can be together forever. And he's like, no, but then your soul would be gone. Huh. Sorry. I know I looked into this probably way too deeply. I know that a lot of what I've been talking about has been me reading between the lines and putting my own experiences with suicide into what Bella is saying and doing. Bella does a lot of saying she isn't suicidal and explaining away her dangerous behaviors, which is what a lot of people struggling with suicidal ideations or self-harm do. If you take what she says at face value, you run the risk of being lulled into a false sense of security, not only by fictional Bella, but maybe by real people in your life who may need your love, support, and help. I'm not a licensed therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, or anything. I'm just a Twilight fan who has had some dark times, still in them, clearly. I think it would be irresponsible to read something like Twilight, read something like New Moon, where Bella is barely holding her suicidal thoughts in, and not just talk about them and tell you all that if you or someone you know is struggling with depression or thoughts of suicide, talk to someone, because Bella didn't. And even though it turned out okay for her after she jumped off a cliff, that probably wouldn't happen for you guys. Unless you have a werewolf best friend and a vampire boyfriend, in which case, where'd you find them? And can I have them? Thank you. Okay. I apologize for getting all preachy at the end there. Discussing things is cool, and I don't have a ton of people in my life who I can go on super long discussions about Twilight with, so I figured I'd put it out there for the world. Please be nice. Oh, sorry. I understand that my contour is really patchy. I'm sorry. Also, if my hair changed, I noticed like 3/4 of the way through that my hair was drying out, so it lost that like cool, Hi, my hair is really cool, thanks. It lost that like cool, wet, slicked back look, so I like re-wet it, so it goes from like being fairly wet to being dry to being wet again. Hello, continuity error. Okay. I'm gonna go and hopefully learn how to edit videos.